Martin Rutte with William Miller. I'm a new member of the Guild. William is an old member. And so I'm going to find out, as are you, more about William. William, one of the things that people in the Guild are consistent about is that spirituality informs their work, and that they're very concerned in a lovely way about spiritual wisdom. How has spiritual wisdom come into your life?
You know, it came to me quite early in a certain way when I was in high school, Catholic high school. We did retreats once a year. Did that during my college years, even though I was leaving my particular religion choice. But over the years, it kept. Even when I was working at Stanford Research Institute and the innovation program, and even after I left that, I wanted to have what I call my monk days. There was something about having the time for contemplation, for connection, and to even just feeling my sense in the world. And that has grown over the years and the decades. When you said I'm an old member, I didn't know which way to take that.
Oh,
yeah. And I'll say that one of the moments for me was feeling like my spiritual life was so important to me in terms of growing it, but I didn't have a way of seeing it connected to my work. And it felt like it was compartmentalized one way or the other. And I remember a time in my 30s, this is when I was still at SRI, that I realized at some intuitive moment that what my work was about was how our spirituality and creativity / innovation and business, facets of the very same jewel. They weren't even separate things that need to be integrated or put together or whatever. They were looking at the same jewel from just 3 different lenses, or 3 different facets, I should say. And as I warmed up to that it began for me to see that, for example, how is it that the notion of unconditional love, in the New Testament, it's Jesus says, love your enemy and be loving in the same way that the sun shines on the just and the unjust. And I always thought that was the most radical thing I ever read, basically. But how is that unconditional love the very foundation of business? How could it be the very foundation of my relationships? How is that? Is the foundation of creativity. And that has been a question that I have loved that doesn't have any single endpoint answer. It's more a question that's like a fuel for the next part of my life. And so that sense of how do you have unconditional, selfless, and fearless love? Fearless because in love you feel a connection, which how can you have fear? Fear is only out of separation. And when that separation is dissolved, like maybe when you see a baby for the first time, or you love your spouse or whoever, when that separation is dissolved, there's no fear. There's just being. And I've come to realize that even the thing in the business world of empathy for design thinking, empathy is a doorway into unconditional love. But it's also a doorway into having to understand that who people really are is not even their personality. Who people really are is a deeper soul than that. The personality is more like the clothes that being is wearing. And we judge people by their clothes, we judge people by their personalities, but that undercuts what we can do even in business and how we treat each other. So I would say it's that kind of growing awareness that came from that one insight about what is really my purpose in work and life. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. And for me, what I see is the inquiry. As in any inquiry, what happens as you keep asking the question is the arena deepens and broadens. And so that through line is very clear to me. So thank you. You're in the guild. What wisdom and experience can you offer the guild about this arena called conscious leadership?
I like the word conscious. It somehow is a little bit more of a playing field than even the word spiritual for me in some ways.
How so?
That being conscious is kind of like even how am I just being aware of this apple or this orange that I'm eating? Or am I off somewhere else and just chowing down some food? Being unconscious, if you will, to the moment. Can I live in this present moment? And it leads me to not spiritual, sometimes leads me to meditation or God and things like this. But this grounds me back into just being present in this life. We're conscious. And how do we lead from what conscious also means to me is a certain oneness, not a uniformity with no differentiation, but a wholeness that allows us to be different. And yet at the same time, it's all one body. I'll tell you just a quick story about that. I happened to have a wonderful opportunity to sit into a very small seminar of 40 people with Joseph Campbell when he was alive. And after he's finished talking about some things, he had a Q&A. And in the Q&A, people would ask him a question and he would answer, and then another question or another thought. Someone would comment on the previous questionnaire, and then Joseph would comment. And I had about a 60-second experience that this was just like one person having a conversation in our head. It was just a single being having different voices to make a conversation, but just the same way that when you're by yourself, you have this little conversation going on. I had this experience of one being with 40 faces. And that has stayed with me, that's the experience in a certain way of even the guild or of other places that I can be in. That how do we have the conversation not by being separate from each other, but that we find a wholeness. And in that wholeness, the conversations, no one's going to grandstand, no one's going to puff themselves up, no one's going to put somebody else down. We're just having a conversation within our own being. And I find that is just an opening to my spiritual awareness of what I'm coming to feel is the nature of life.
You know, in the answer to the first question and in the second question, there is a very clear through line. The first answer, you talked about the different facets of the same, my language, diamond. Mm-hmm. And in the second, you talk about 40 different conversations, but really one, with 40 and one being equal. So that exploration for you, that uncovering of the multifaceted diamond, that you can focus on the diamond as an entity, while also being entranced with each facet. So they're very clear. Thank you.
Sure.
So that continuing through line, as I mentioned, what's your learning edge, your leading edge? What energizes you to keep discovering and learning?
I would say, excuse me, it's a combination of this exploration of how do I grow in unconditional love, first of all. And I noticed that our language is hypnotic. Language is something that we've invented to be able to manage our separateness from the world, the separateness that we experience from our senses and from our language. And how do we learn and speak and experience from a non-dual rather than a dualistic framework? Now, I'll give you one brief example of this. We use words like I love you, or I love my car, or I love this and that. Subject, I, verb, and object. And the implication to me is that it's the object that's causing my experience. I don't love this person. I love this person because they are different. And yet, if I want that unconditional love, that it would say, I love. And that shines on whoever is in front of me.
But wouldn't you say just love?
Or just love, yeah. And so how do I shift my experience from feeling that love is something caused to me, and therefore I have to get others to be the way I want them to be in order for me to love them? You know, it's a trap, and it's a hypnotic trap. So that's one example of what's learning me, is how to explore how would I speak from a non-dual place? What is it that how would I have to shift my normal way of personality, of thinking, of judging? And how do I shift so that's not even present in the experience? Or if it's present, it's more like, I use the example of a front door lantern. You've got a bulb and you have a fancy lantern with glass and brass and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the glass and brass is just my personality, but the bulb is who I am. And, you know, and so I'm not going to, and you have a different brass lantern shape, but you have the same bulb. So how do I stay in touch from bulb to bulb rather than being all enamored by how fancy the lanterns are? You know, that's my learning edge right there.
Very clear, very clear. What do you long for? I want to rephrase the question specifically for you. What does your soul, your divine essence, long for?
Mm. That's a really good question, because I don't have a fixed answer. One answer I have is for a world in which that kind of unconditional love becomes the very foundation of how we know each other. Not just how we relate, but that we live in the constant presence of I and thou, or we. Either one. I long for that and know it's possible. And I'm impatient sometimes. It's like I have the prayer that rings in my head: Dear God, give me patience, and I want it now. You know?
I know the
so
prayer.
I'm caught up in that sometimes.
I know that prayer.
Yeah.
So, all right.
I see the other thing.
Please.
What I've learned is that in terms of my personal spiritual growth, I am wary of having any goals.
Yeah.
Because I know that the goals are the goals my ego would set in the first place, you know. And so I've come to a little phrase that I keep repeating at times to myself, which is that the moment or possibility of enlightenment for this particular being called William Miller is none of my business. It's not my concern. All I need to do is just love as best I know how to love, and just do that. That's all I have to be concerned about. I don't have to be concerned about some goal that I achieve in terms of my spiritual growth. And that keeps me a bit sober. Keeps me a little bit more centered and not getting off into my flights of fancy of, oh, I'd love to be a saint or something, you know.
Thank you, William. The Guild has an incredible collection of amazing people. What would you like from them to support you?
good listening, you know, and honest differences. You know, I thrive on exploring this two-step dance, like a Texas two-step. I'm here in Texas, you know. It's like the country dance of the same but different, same but different, same but different. And to be able to hold both of those at the same time. And so in the relationships I have with people, to feel the celebration of our differences and to feel the oneness underneath that at the same time, that's what, that support in that journey is what I'd like.
You have it from me, for sure.
Thank you.
There's an open-ended question. I don't know, did you choose one?
No, you get to choose.
Can I choose not one of those?
Yes, you sure? Yeah.
How do you play?
It's great. One of my types of play is photography. And it's a quiet kind of play. But it's a play where I start to feel the joy of just being in the present moment. It's that kind. That's one thing. Another type of thing is going bike riding with my wife. We're getting to the point we want to get some e-bikes, but that's going to be next year, I think. But we have a couple of bikes that are foldable bikes, and going out and just having that kind of exercise. And we live right near a park that has about a 4-mile green belt all the way to Lake Louisville here. And that kind of exercise feels like play to me. I enjoy it. And so it's those two things that I think that'd be my play.
William, I feel in this, because we've apparently in our conversation before the interview, we had met a couple of times, but neither of us remember the specifics. It's good to meet you again.
Yeah, good to meet you again too. I really appreciate the time.
Thank you. And I feel very nourished by your answers.